The air in the Whitaker Estates community clubhouse tasted like lemon polish and entitlement, the same fake fresh scent that had defined every HOA meeting for the last decade. Outside the bay windows, the perfectly manicured lawns rolled toward the artificial lake. Every blade of grass exactly 2 inches tall because Karen Voss, our beloved HOA president, had fined Mrs. Delgado last month for letting hers reach 2 1/4. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocatingly polite. We were gathered for the reading of the last will and testament of Eleanor Whitaker, the woman who had literally built this gated paradise from swampland in 1987, and the woman I had spent the last 730 days keeping alive while everyone else was busy polishing their perfect lawns and perfect reputations. My name is Aurora Flores. I spend my days hunting lies buried inside spreadsheets as a forensic accountant for a firm nobody has ever heard of. I live in a 1,200 square foot ranch on Maple Lane that I bought with my own savings. I drive a 10-year-old sedan. I clip coupons. I am the background noise in the symphony of Whitaker Estates. And right now, sitting in the high-backed velvet chair that Eleanor had picked out herself, I had never felt more like a clerical error in the grand ledger of this neighborhood. Karen Voss sat front and center in the leather wingback that used to be Eleanor's, legs crossed, power suit pressed to perfection, a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. To her right sat her husband Robert and their golden child daughter Veronica, both nodding like they were already counting the future special assessment fees they'd slap on everyone. To her left was Chase, the board treasurer, tapping his foot and already mentally shopping for a new golf cart with HOA money. And then there was me, Aurora, the one who knew which brand of adult diapers Eleanor preferred, the one who showed up at 3 a.m. when the dementia made her wander the cul-de-sac looking for a lighthouse that had never existed here, the one who had wiped surfaces, managed oxygen tanks, and listened to every story about the original covenants while Karen was too busy writing new fines. Behind a folding table that looked like it had been dragged from the storage unit, sat Rowan Garrison, Eleanor's lawyer since before most of us moved in. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and the room went deathly silent. "We shall proceed," Rowan said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the fake wood laminate floor. He began with the standard legal boilerplate. Nobody cared. They were waiting for the assets, the clubhouse, the lakefront common area, the 7-figure reserve fund Eleanor had built. To Karen Voss and the current HOA board, Rowan read, "I leave 50% of the operational profits from the Whitaker Estates Reserve Fund, along with the entirety of my personal investment accounts, to ensure the continued smooth operation of our beloved community." Karen let out a small, breathless sound and squeezed Robert's hand. I did a quick mental calculation. That was easily $500,000 in liquid cash plus a passive income stream that would keep her in power suits and golf carts until she died. They nodded solemnly, acting as if they were accepting a heavy civic burden rather than a blank check. To Chase Whitaker, board treasurer, Rowan continued. Chase stopped tapping. "I leave my collection of vintage community memorabilia and the entirety of my diverse stock portfolio." Chase whispered, "Yes," too loud, then cleared his throat and tried to look somber. That portfolio was substantial. Eleanor had bought tech stocks in the 90s. Chase had just become a millionaire on paper. Rowan turned a page. To Veronica Voss, future board president in training, "I leave the deed and full operational control of the Whitaker Estates clubhouse along with the surrounding 4 acres of common property." The room exhaled. There it was, the crown jewel. The clubhouse wasn't just a building. It was the heart of the HOA, historic in its own suburban way, worth millions if modernized correctly. Veronica tilted her chin up, a tight, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Thank you," she said softly. "I will ensure her legacy is modernized." My stomach twisted. Modernized. In Veronica's vocabulary, that meant gutting the soul out of the place, ripping out the original 1980s paneling, installing glass walls for events, and turning the rose garden Eleanor planted into a parking lot for luxury weddings that would generate revenue for the board. Then Rowan stopped. He took off his glasses. He looked down at the document, then up at me. His expression was unreadable, but for a second I thought I saw pity. And finally, Rowan said, voice dropping an octave, to my dear neighbor and friend Aurora Flores. Every head turned toward me. The silence stretched thin like a rubber band about to snap. I held my breath. I didn't expect the clubhouse. But surely after 2 years of sleeping on a cot next to Eleanor's hospital bed, sacrificing my own promotion, there would be something, a small trust fund, enough to pay off my student loans. Rowan put his glasses back on and read the words exactly as written. I leave nothing but memories. The bequest consists of her personal collection of diaries, family photographs, audio recordings, and home movies to Aurora. I leave the past. The silence held for exactly 3 seconds. Then it broke. It started with a snort from Chase. He covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. Karen let out a sigh that sounded suspiciously like relief. Oh, Aurora, she said, turning to me with a pitying smile that didn't reach her eyes. She patted my knee like I was a child. That is actually so sweet. It really fits you, honey. You were always the sentimental one. You love that emotional stuff. Chase shook his head, still laughing. Man, that's poetic. Truly. Veronica smoothed her skirt, eyes gleaming with triumph. Honestly, Aurora, it's better this way. Assets come with taxes and liability. Eleanor did you a favor. At least you have something the IRS can't audit. I sat frozen. Nothing but memories. For 2 years I had cleaned the vomit, sung her to sleep when dementia made her forget her own address, listened to stories about the original covenants while Karen was too busy enforcing new ones. And this was my payment, a rusted tin box of old junk. It wasn't about the money. It was about the value. To Eleanor, my labor, my love, and my time were worth zero. I was the unpaid volunteer of the neighborhood. Well, Karen announced, clapping her hands together and standing up. This has been emotional, but I think Eleanor would want us to celebrate her life. We have a reservation at the Gilded Lobster in 40 minutes. I'm driving the golf cart. Chase announced he was taking the Mustang Eleanor had left him. Veronica was already discussing renovation timelines with Robert, ignoring everyone else. The oak paneling has to go. It makes the room look like a funeral parlor. We need to knock down that load-bearing wall to open up the view. If we're going to rebrand the clubhouse as a luxury event venue, we need to strip it down to the studs. My heart hammered. Strip it down. They were talking about erasing Eleanor's legacy before her body was even cold. I stood up on shaky legs. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did what Aurora Flores always did. I swallowed the anger and tucked it away in the deep column of bad debts in my mind. I think I'll skip dinner, I said, voice hollow. Suit yourself, Karen replied, not even looking at me. She was already mentally measuring square footage. Don't take too long clearing out your memories. The contractors are coming Monday to start the assessment. I turned toward the door, just wanting to get to my car and drive back to my little ranch house. But Rowan's voice stopped me. Aurora, could you please stay for a few minutes? I need to finalize the transfer of the personal items with Miss Flores. Karen rolled her eyes. Just give her the boxes, Rowan. We don't want to be late for the reservation. It's a legal requirement, Rowan said, tone leaving no room for argument. Go enjoy your dinner. The board filed out like a dark river, carrying their new power with them. Chase slapped my shoulder as he passed. Don't worry, sis. I'll let you ride in the golf cart sometime. Shotgun. Then they were gone. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the lawyer and the ghost of Eleanor Whitaker. I turned back to Rowan, humiliated. If this is just about signing for the diaries, can we do it quickly? I really need to get home. Rowan didn't answer immediately. He reached under the table and pulled out a metal box, an old biscuit tin rusted at the corners. He placed it on the polished table next to a thick manila envelope sealed with red wax. On the front, in Eleanor's shaky handwriting, was my name. Your neighbor was many things, Aurora, Rowan said softly, but she was not a fool, and she was certainly not forgetful when it mattered. I stared at the box. What is this? The will I just read was the public testament, Rowan said. It was the script she wrote for the audience that just left the room. He placed his hand on the envelope. Sit down, Aurora. The reading is not over. We have not even started the real work yet. I looked at the door where Karen and the board had exited to go eat lobster and plan the destruction of Eleanor's clubhouse. Then I looked at the rusted tin box. A strange feeling washed over me, the same feeling I got at work when a balance sheet didn't add up. The feeling that something was hidden. The feeling that a trap had been laid and someone was about to step into it. I didn't leave. I walked back to the chair and sat down. Tell me, I said. Rowan smiled, the thin, sharp expression that looked dangerous. You might want to get comfortable, Aurora. He slid the envelope toward me. Because nothing but memories is a very specific legal term in this neighborhood, and you are about to find out exactly how much those memories are worth. 2 years ago, the decline didn't happen like a cliff drop. It happened like the erosion of the cliffs along the artificial lake. Slow, persistent, and then suddenly a chunk of the foundation was just gone. It started with small things. A misplaced tea kettle found in the linen closet of the clubhouse, a forgotten name of a neighbor she had known for 40 years. But the night the security patrol found Eleanor Whitaker wandering down Maple Lane in her nightgown at 3 a.m. looking for a lighthouse that had never existed here was the night the neighborhood shifted. The diagnosis was advanced vascular dementia. The board held a crisis meeting via Zoom. Karen dialed in from her home office, skyline of her McMansion behind her perfectly coiffed hair. Chase joined from a hammock in Costa Rica holding a coconut. Robert and Veronica were on a golf retreat in Florida. Someone needs to be there to manage the transition, Karen had said, checking her emails on a second screen. But obviously my docket is full until next quarter. I can't leave the vibe here right now, Chase added. I'm on the verge of a breakthrough with my lifestyle brand. We just can't handle the cold anymore. Honey, Veronica sighed. It's bad for Robert's joints. And just like that, the silence on the call became a spotlight pointing directly at me. I didn't argue. I packed 2 suitcases, negotiated remote work, and moved into Eleanor's guest room. I thought I was going there to help her die. I didn't know I was going there to learn how to live. The months that followed were a blur of antiseptic smells and the rhythmic beeping of monitors in the high-dependency room at Seacrest General. My life shrank to the size of that room. I became an expert in things no 30-year-old wants to know. The precise consistency of thickened water, the difference between good and bad oxygen saturation, the exact angle to position a pillow to prevent bed sores. I slept on a folding chair that felt like concrete blocks. Night after night, I would wake to the sound of her rasping breath, terrified the silence had finally come. Aura, she would whisper in the dark. I'm here, Eleanor, I would say, reaching through the rails to hold her hand. Her skin felt like dry leaves. Did you close the shutters? The nor'easter is coming. It was July, but in her mind she was back in one of the legendary storms that had battered the coast decades ago. I closed them, Eleanor. We're safe. Good girl, she would sigh. You always remember the important things. While I was wiping drool and changing adult diapers, my phone would buzz with notifications from the outside world. Ping, Karen on Instagram at a Women in HOA gala holding a champagne flute. Caption celebrating resilience and legacy. Ping, Chase on TikTok standing on a surfboard shouting, living my best life. Don't let anything tie you down. They were living in Technicolor. I was living in a sepia nightmare. They visited, of course rarely, briefly, performances of concern. Karen would sweep in for an afternoon, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. She would stand at the foot of the bed, never touching Eleanor, and speak in a loud, slow voice as if Eleanor were deaf, not confused. "We're handling the estate, Eleanor. Do not worry." Eleanor would just stare at her, eyes clouded. Once after Karen left, Eleanor turned to me and asked, "Who was that lady from the bank?" I didn't have the heart to correct her. When Eleanor was stable enough to be moved back to her home in the estates for hospice, the dynamic changed. The house became our universe. But the real heart was the clubhouse just across the street. Built in the 1980s, it had 15 event rooms, each with a view of the lake. White clapboard siding that groaned in the wind, and a wraparound porch where 3 generations of residents had watched the sun rise. The walls were lined with guest logs dating back 40 years. Those logs were the spine of the community. Every resident who had ever hosted an event had written something: a thank you, a poem, a drawing of a duck. Eleanor and I fell into a routine. In the afternoons when the sun cut through the sheer curtains, she would have moments of lucid clarity. We called it the window. It might last 10 minutes or an hour. We started the memory project during those windows. It began by accident. I was cleaning out a dusty cedar chest and found a shoebox of black and white photographs. Eleanor saw one. A picture of a young man in a naval uniform leaning against a railing, and her eyes lit up with a fire I hadn't seen in months. "That's Arthur," she said, voice strong. "He tipped $2 in 1988. That was a lot of money then. He stole the salt shakers, though." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in weeks. "Wait," I said, pulling out my phone. "Tell me that again." I hit record. We went through hundreds of photos. I bought a label maker and a fresh notebook. I became the archivist of her fading mind. I would hold up a picture or an object, a brass key, a dried flower, a menu from the 1990s, and she would tell the story. "This was the menu from the night the senator stayed here," she told me, pointing to a stained piece of cardstock. "He drank too much whiskey and tried to buy the clubhouse. I told him it wasn't for sale. He told me everything has a price. I told him he was wrong." She looked at me then, blue eyes piercing through the cataracts. "Do you believe that, Aurora, that everything has a price?" "I'm an accountant, Eleanor," I joked. "My job is literally to put a price on things." She didn't smile. She reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "If you lost this clubhouse tomorrow, if the roof blew off and the walls fell down, what would you have?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "In money." "No," she snapped. "You would have the stories. You would know who walked these halls. You would know why the third step on the porch creaks. You keep the history, Aurora. The rest is just wood and glass." I nodded, thinking it was just the romantic rambling of a dying woman. "I'll keep the stories, Eleanor. I promise." But the peace of our afternoon sessions was fragile. It was frequently shattered by the reality of the present. One rainy Tuesday in November, Karen arrived unannounced. She didn't come alone. She brought a man in a sleek gray suit carrying a laser measuring tape. They walked through the clubhouse like they were inspecting a crime scene. I heard them in the hallway while I was trying to get Eleanor to eat a few spoonfuls of broth. "The load-bearing walls here are problematic," I heard Karen say. "But if we open up the floor plan, we can double the occupancy for events. Weddings are where the margin is." "The historic designation might be a hurdle," the man replied. "I can handle the zoning board," Karen said confidently. "We just need to frame it as a restoration. Even if we're gutting it." My stomach turned. I wanted to scream at them to get out. This was still Eleanor's community. She was still alive in the next room. But I couldn't leave her. Eleanor had stopped eating. She was staring at the door, head cocked. "Who are the vultures?" she whispered. "It's just Karen. Eleanor," I said soothingly. "She speaks too loud," Eleanor muttered. "She walks like she owns the floor." A moment later, Karen breezed into the room. She didn't knock. She was holding a glossy brochure for a luxury event chain called the Azure Collection. "Eleanor, great news," Karen announced, waving the brochure. "I've been looking into partnerships. These people are interested in the location. They have a vision for a luxury spa wing." Eleanor looked at the brochure. It showed a sterile glass-walled building that looked like an airport terminal. "A spa," Eleanor repeated. "Yes. It increases the property value by 40%, Karen said, tapping a manicured nail on the paper. "We just need to sign a letter of intent. It's non-binding mostly, just to start the conversation." She placed a pen and a document on the bedside table. "I know you're tired, but this will secure the legacy. Just a little signature." I stood up. "Karen, she is exhausted. She hasn't eaten all day. Can't this wait?" Karen shot me a look that could freeze water. "This is business, Aurora. Adults are talking. You worry about the soup." Eleanor closed her eyes. She looked so small in that big bed. Her hand trembled as she reached for the paper. Karen smiled, uncapping the pen. But Eleanor didn't sign. She pushed the paper away. It fluttered to the floor. "This clubhouse," Eleanor said, voice barely a whisper, "is not a number in your spreadsheet, Karen." Karen's smile vanished. She snatched the paper up. "You're confused, Eleanor. We will talk when you're more yourself." She stormed out, heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floors she wanted to rip out. I sat back down, heart pounding. "You okay, Eleanor?" She opened one eye. It was clear as a bell. "She thinks I'm broken," Eleanor said. "She thinks because the plumbing is old, the water doesn't run." I didn't understand what she meant then. I just stroked her hair and told her to rest. That night I realized the divide wasn't just emotional. It was functional. I was the technician who knew how to operate the machinery of care. I knew which pharmacy was open 24 hours. I knew how to navigate Medicare paperwork. I was the one changing sheets and bearing witness to the ugly reality of decline. Karen and the board were the heirs. They showed up for photo ops. They signed checks using Eleanor's money. Of course, they lived in the abstract world of legacy and assets while I lived in the concrete world of bedpans and morphine drips. One evening Chase came by. He set up a ring light in the living room. "Hey guys, welcome back to the channel," he said to his phone, putting on a sad, soulful face. "I'm here at our historic clubhouse. It's tough seeing the matriarch fade away, but it reminds me life is short. Buy the ticket, take the ride. Link in bio for my new merch." He didn't even go into her room. He filmed the lake view, the antique clock in the hall, then left to meet friends at the country club. I watched him from the top of the stairs holding a basket of soiled laundry. The bitterness tasted like copper in my mouth. They were harvesting her life for content and capital while I was trying to hold the pieces together with my bare hands. But Eleanor saw. She saw everything. A few weeks later, during a particularly bad snowstorm, we were isolated. The power flickered. The wind howled. Eleanor was restless. She kept pointing to the closet. "The box," she said. "The blue one with the recipes." I thought she was hungry. "Eleanor, you can't cook right now." "Not for eating," she rasped. "For keeping." "Bring it." I fetched the old blue metal recipe box from the kitchen. It smelled of vanilla and old paper. She made me open it. Inside, buried under index cards for clam chowder and blueberry buckle, was a small brass key. It was tarnished and sticky with decades of kitchen grease. "Take it," she commanded. I held the key in my palm. It was cold and heavy. "What does this open?" "The truth," she whispered. She looked at me with an intensity that frightened me. Keep it, Aurora. Do not tell Karen. Do not tell the board. When the time comes, when you need to know who truly owns this clubhouse, you will find the lock. Eleanor, you're scaring me. What lock? She closed her eyes, exhausted. Just keep it. Promise me. I promise. I put the key in my pocket. Later I strung it on a cheap silver chain and wore it under my sweater. I told myself it was just a trinket, a symptom of her paranoia. But as I looked around the room at the camera I had set up, the stack of notebooks filled with her stories, the silence of the house holding its breath, I began to wonder. I was recording the past. Karen was planning the future. But Eleanor was playing a game in the present that none of us understood. I just didn't know then that I was the only player she had dealt a winning hand. The nights in Eleanor's house had a rhythm of their own, a symphony of creaking timber and the distant rhythmic lapping of the artificial lake against the seawall. For months I had tuned my breathing to that rhythm, sleeping with one ear open, waiting for the sound of a cough or a fall. But on this particular Tuesday it was not a sound of distress that woke me. It was silence. The oxygen concentrator, which usually hummed like a low-grade headache in the corner, was quiet. I threw off my blanket and ran down the hallway, heart hammering. I burst into her room expecting the worst. Eleanor was sitting up in bed. She had taken off her nasal cannula. The moonlight poured in through the bay window, bathing her in silver that made her white hair look like a halo. She did not look sick. She did not look lost in the fog of 1972. She looked like the woman who had stared down bank managers and hurricane winds. Aura, she said. Her voice was steady. Stop hovering. You look like a ghost. Exhaled, clutching the door frame. Eleanor, you scared me. Why is the machine off? Because it's loud, she replied, smoothing the quilt. And I need to think. Come here. Sit. She patted the edge of the mattress. It was a command, not a request. I walked over and sat down. The room smelled of lavender oil and rubbing alcohol. I reached for her wrist to check her pulse, a reflex I couldn't shake, but she swatted my hand away. I am not a patient tonight, she said sharply. I am the founder of this community, and I have a question for you. She turned her head. Her blue eyes were piercing, entirely devoid of the cataract's cloudiness in this light. It was one of those moments of terminal lucidity the doctors had warned me about. Tell me the truth, Aurora. Not the soft lies you tell me when I'm forgetting names. When I'm gone, really gone, what are they going to do with my clubhouse? I hesitated. I looked at the wallpaper with its fading floral pattern she had picked out in 1985. I thought about lying. I thought about telling her Karen would keep it as a community sanctuary. Eleanor, she warned. I sighed. Karen will sell the land to the developers she's been talking to. Or she'll partner with that hotel group. She calls it optimizing capacity. She wants to knock down the east wall to put in a glass atrium for weddings. She says the history is heavy. Eleanor nodded slowly. She did not look angry. She looked resigned, like a captain watching a storm she knew she couldn't sail around. And Chase. Chase thinks it's a content farm. He wants to turn it into an experience resort. Glamping in the garden. Yoga on the deck. He wants to monetize the vibe. Eleanor let out a dry chuckle that sounded like dry leaves scraping together. Optimizing? Monetizing? They use these big words to hide small crimes. They think if they polish the floor enough, no one will notice they've rotted the beams. She leaned forward, gripping my arm. There are some things, Aurora, that if you optimize them too much, they simply cease to exist. You cannot turn a home into a machine and expect the heart to stay beating. She pointed to the shelf where my camera bag sat. Get the camera. And the tripod. I am not going to hold a phone like a teenager. We are going to do this properly. I set up the equipment. The red recording light blinked in the semi-darkness. Eleanor sat up straighter, fixing the collar of her nightgown. She smoothed her hair. For a moment the years melted away, and she was the formidable matriarch who had run this community's chamber of commerce for 2 decades. "Are we rolling?" she asked. "Yes, Eleanor." She looked directly into the lens. She did not smile. "This is the history of Whitaker Estates Clubhouse," she began. Her voice projected, clear and authoritative. "I laid the cornerstone in 1987. I carried the gravel up from the lake with my own hands because I could not afford heavy equipment. This clubhouse was not built on money. It was built on debt and stubbornness." She spoke for 40 minutes. It was not rambling. This was a deposition. She listed dates. She listed the specific storms that had torn the roof off. She listed the names of every resident who had hosted events and the babies born in the side rooms during the blizzard of '93. She described the lean years when the bank threatened foreclosure every month and how she had sold her own engagement ring to pay the property taxes in 1992. A fact I had never known. "I kept this roof over Karen's head when she was failing her real estate exam and needed a place to hide," she said to the camera, eyes hard. "I kept it over Chase's head every summer he got fired. I kept it over every single one of you." She paused, taking a ragged breath. I moved to stop the recording, but she held up a hand. "One more thing." She looked away from the lens and looked at me standing in the shadows. "Aurora, come into the frame." I froze. "Eleanor, no. I'm in my pajamas. Get in the frame." I stepped into the shot, crouching beside her bed. She placed her hand on my shoulder. Felt heavy, grounding. "This is my neighbor Aurora Flores," she said to the camera. "She is the only one who knows where the bodies are buried because she is the only one who stayed to hold the shovel." She turned to look at me, ignoring the lens. "Now promise me something," she whispered. The intensity in her eyes was frightening. "Promise me you will not let them rewrite the past. They will try. Karen will say I was confused. Chase will say I was old-fashioned. They will try to edit the story until it fits their sales brochure. I won't let them," I said, voice shaking. "You have a mind for the truth, Aurora. You count the pennies. You find the missing numbers. You have the cold head that I used to have. You are the keeper. Do you understand? You are the keeper." "I understand," I said, though I truly didn't. I thought she just meant I was the keeper of the neighborhood anecdotes. I didn't know she was deputizing me. A few days later the clarity began to fade, replaced by the familiar fog. But there were still moments of sharp, terrifying awareness. I was in the kitchen making tea one afternoon when I heard the front door open. It was Karen. She hadn't texted. She breathed in, smelling of expensive perfume and rain, carrying a leather portfolio. "I just need 5 minutes with her," Karen said. "Legal housekeeping. Boring stuff. She's having a bad day, Karen," I warned. "She thinks it's 1999. "Perfect," Karen muttered. "Then she'll be happy to see me." I followed her up the stairs, staying a few steps behind. I stopped outside the bedroom door, standing in the shadow of the linen closet. I told myself I was just being protective. But deep down, Eleanor's words about optimizing were ringing in my ears. I watched through the crack in the door. Karen sat on the edge of the bed. She opened the portfolio and pulled out a stack of documents thick with legal jargon. "Eleanor," Karen said, voice bright and loud. "It's Karen. I have some papers for the insurance. You know how they are. Just need to update the beneficiary forms so we can make sure your care is covered." Eleanor blinked at her. "Insurance?" "Yes. For the doctors." "For Aurora," Karen added, using my name as leverage. "We want to make sure Aurora gets paid for her time, don't we?" My blood ran cold. Karen had never offered to pay me a cent. "For Aurora," Eleanor repeated. She looked at the pen Karen was holding out, a heavy Mont Blanc. "Just sign right here by the yellow tag," Karen said, pointing. Eleanor's hand trembled as she took the pen. She hovered over the paper. I wanted to rush in and stop her. But then Eleanor paused. She looked up at Karen for a split second. The fog lifted. You have very nice teeth, Karen. Thank you, Eleanor. Wolves have nice teeth too, Eleanor said softly. Karen stiffened. What? Nothing, Eleanor sighed. She lowered the pen and signed. Her signature was shaky, a spiderweb of ink. Karen snatched the papers away before the ink was even dry. Great. Perfect. I will handle the filing. You rest now. She practically ran out of the room. I waited until I heard her car start before I went back in. Eleanor was staring at her hands. Did you sign it? I asked gently. I signed, she said. She sounded infinitely tired. What was it? Eleanor? She turned her head on the pillow. A small secretive smile played on her lips. Paper, she whispered. Just paper? Karen thinks paper is magic. She thinks if you write a word down, it becomes true. She closed her eyes. But papers are never simple, Aurora. Sometimes you sign a paper just to see who brings it to you. Eleanor, if you signed away the deed, hush. The deed is not where she thinks it is. Go check the kitchen. The blue box. The recipe box? I asked, confused. Go. I went downstairs. The kitchen was cold. I pulled down the battered blue tin box. I dug through the index cards and there it was, the small brass key I had found before, but this time wrapped around it was a scrap of paper I hadn't seen. It read, For the day the wolves come. I took the key out. It was sticky with old butter grease. I walked back upstairs. I have it, I said, showing her the key. Eleanor nodded without opening her eyes. Keep it. Don't clean it. Let it be ugly. Nobody steals ugly things. What does it open? It opens the silence, she said, drifting off. It opens the things I couldn't say when I was trying to be a good neighbor. That was the last real conversation we had. The decline accelerated after that. The days blurred into a cycle of morphine doses and shallow breathing. The priest came. The board came, stood awkwardly in the corner for 20 minutes, and then left because they had a flight to catch. But on the final afternoon, as the rain lashed against the windows, she woke up one last time. The room was dim. I was sitting by her side, holding her hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip tightened suddenly. She pulled me down closer. Her breath smelled of decay, but her eyes were frantic.
Urgent.
Aura, she gasped. I'm here, Eleanor. It's okay. You can go. No, she said. Listen. The memories. I have them. I soothed. I have the videos. I have the photos. No, she hissed. Not just stories. Evidence. Memories are the only thing they cannot confiscate. Aurora. She paused, gasping. Unless you hand them over. Do not hand them over. I won't. I promised. Tears streaming. I'll keep them safe. I won't let them take your stories. I thought she was talking about the nursing home. I thought she was scared of being forgotten. Good, she whispered. Her grip loosened. Now turn off that damn machine. It's too loud. She died an hour later. I sat there in the silence. The sound of the lake lapping outside, clutching a sticky brass key and a hard drive full of what I thought were just sentimental ramblings. I cried for the loss of my neighbor. I did not know yet that I should have been crying for the board, because Eleanor Whitaker hadn't just left me a box of nostalgia. She had prepared a dossier. She had spent her final lucid hours not making peace with God, but laying a trap for her board, and she had made me the trigger. The heavy oak door of the clubhouse clicked shut, sealing the room with a sound that felt final. But the echoes of the board's parting shots still hung in the air, stinging like invisible wasps. Just moments before, Karen had paused at the door, adjusting her silk scarf, and offered me a smile that was almost convincing. "Honestly, Aurora, you really dodged a bullet," she had said, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The capital gains tax on this place alone is going to be a nightmare. You get to keep the sweet stuff without the headache. You're lucky. Really, you were never built for the stress of management." Chase had been less subtle. He walked past the table where the rusted biscuit tin sat, tapped the lid with his knuckle, and winked. "Hey, scan some of those old photos for me, would you? I need vintage content for my Throwback Thursday posts. The algorithm loves that nostalgic aesthetic." Karen had simply sighed and said, "It's better this way. We don't want you overwhelmed, honey." Then they were gone, off to the Gilded Lobster to eat market-price seafood and toast to their new power. I was left standing in the center of the room, hands clenched, staring at Rowan. He did not look like a man who had just delivered disappointment. He looked like a man who had just cleared the stage for the main act. "Sit down, Aurora," he said. I sank back into the velvet chair. "Is there more paperwork to sign for the box? Or can I just take my memories and go?" Rowan ignored my bitterness. He reached for the rusted tin, the blue one Eleanor had made me fetch so many times, and pulled a small silver key from his vest pocket. "The document I just read was the public will," Rowan said, inserting the key into the tiny jammed lock. "It is a public document once filed with probate court. Anyone can read it. Karen can read it. The press can read it." The lock clicked open with a sharp snap. But Eleanor Whitaker was a private woman, and for her most important assets she did not trust the public courts. And she certainly did not trust her board. He lifted the lid. Inside, resting on old velvet, was not a sewing kit. It was a silver USB drive, heavy and sleek, looking jarringly modern against the rusted metal. Beside it lay 3 thick envelopes sealed with red wax and a single bound document with a blue cover sheet. Rowan took the blue document and slid it across the table toward me. The title was printed in bold black letters, "The Whitaker Estates Clubhouse Irrevocable Trust." "What is this?" I asked, voice trembling slightly. "A will transfers ownership after death," Rowan explained. "A trust transfers ownership immediately, privately, and outside probate. This trust was established 2 years ago, the day Eleanor was deemed to have full mental capacity by 2 independent neurologists." He tapped the document. "Currently I am the temporary trustee, but the document is written with a trigger clause. Upon the death of Eleanor Whitaker, the position of sole trustee, the person with absolute unchecked legal authority over the Whitaker Estates Clubhouse and all its contents, is offered to a successor." He paused. "That successor is you, Aurora." I stared at the paper. The letters seemed to swim. "But Karen, you just read the will. It said Karen gets the clubhouse." "The will bequeaths the residual estate to Karen," Rowan corrected gently. "But the clubhouse is no longer part of the estate. The clubhouse belongs to the trust. If you sign this, Karen inherits a clubhouse that the estate does not own. She inherits a shell. You own the pearl." My heart hammered. "Why did you do the reading? Why let them think they won?" "Because Eleanor wanted them to show you who they are," Rowan said. "She wanted you to see them when they thought no one was watching. She wanted you to see them celebrating your exclusion." He reached into the tin again and pulled out the thickest sealed envelope. On the front, in Eleanor's shaky script, "To Aurora, only open when you are ready to accept the pain along with the power." He slid it on top of the trust document. "This is not a lottery win, Aurora. If you sign that page, you become the enemy of the board. Karen will sue. The neighbors will whisper. Chase will slander you online. They will say you manipulated a dying woman. They will say you are a thief." He pointed to the silver USB drive. "That is why she left you the memories. That drive contains the digital backups of every recording, every scanned document, every financial record you two collected. It is not sentimental clutter. It is a forensic audit of their neglect and their greed. Rowan leaned back. Your neighbor did not leave you money, Aurora. She left you the truth. Truth is a high-value asset, but the cost of liquidity is very expensive. You have to be willing to spend your reputation to use it. I looked at the documents. I felt a wave of nausea. I was the quiet one, the one who fixed things, the one who smoothed over the cracks. If I signed this, I would be taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of the neighborhood. They will hate me, I whispered. They already undervalue you, Rowan said. Is that better? He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray lake. The board calls you difficult when you ask for fairness. They call you cold when you're simply being accurate. Perhaps it is time you showed them what those words actually mean. I reached out and touched the cold metal of the USB drive. Is it encrypted? Yes. 256-bit. Unbreakable without the passkey. What is the passkey? Rowan turned back. His expression softened just a fraction. She said you would know it. The hint she left is the only day I ever apologized to you. The air left my lungs. I knew the date instantly. It wasn't a birthday. It was a Tuesday in 1998. I was 9. My parents had forgotten to pick me up from school because they were at a ribbon cutting for one of their failed ventures. I had sat on the curb for 4 hours in the rain until Eleanor pulled up in her old station wagon. She hadn't made excuses. She had looked me in the eye and said, I am sorry that the people who are supposed to protect you are too busy protecting their egos. It was the only time an adult in my life had ever admitted fault. I know it, I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. Good. Then you have a choice. You can walk out with just the box. Let Karen turn this place into a hotel and live a quiet life. Or you can sign the acceptance of trusteeship. Take the box and prepare for war. He did not push the pen. He let it sit there. I looked at the clubhouse around me. The oak paneling Karen wanted to rip out. The fireplace Chase wanted to replace with gas. I felt the ghost of Eleanor sitting in the corner watching me, waiting to see if I was the keeper she thought I was. I picked up the pen. I didn't sign it there. My hand was shaking too much. Can I take it with me? I need tonight. Rowan nodded. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires and the clubhouse reverts to the estate by default. I gathered the items, the heavy trust document, the dangerous USB drive, the sealed letter. I put them all back into the rusted biscuit tin and locked it. I walked out of the clubhouse without looking back. The wind was picking up, whipping my hair. I got into my 10-year-old sedan, the one with the dent Chase had put there and never paid for, and I drove. I drove 2 hours south, back to my little ranch house that smelled of stale coffee and loneliness. I placed the rusted tin on my IKEA dining table. It looked ridiculous there against the cheap laminate. It looked like a bomb. I made a cup of tea but didn't drink it. I just sat staring at the box. If I opened it, I could never go back. If I used what was inside, I would destroy the illusion of community I had spent 30 years trying to maintain. I would prove Karen right that I was the difficult one, the one who couldn't just let things be. But then I thought about the signature on the insurance papers. I thought about wolves have nice teeth. I reached for the key on my neck. The duplicate Eleanor had given me, the one she told me to keep dirty. I realized I wasn't afraid of becoming the villain in their story. I was afraid of realizing I had been the victim in mine for far too long. I put the key in the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet house. The wax seal on the envelope cracked with a dry, brittle snap. My hands trembled. I carefully peeled back the heavy paper. Inside was a single handwritten letter and a typed sheet titled Instructions for the Archive. I picked up the letter first. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp angular loops in the blue ink Eleanor always favored. But this was not the shaky scroll of her final months. This was written with firm pressure. My dearest Aurora, if you are reading this, it means Rowan has done his job and you have chosen the difficult path. I am sorry I had to leave you a burden instead of a simple gift, but a clubhouse like Whitaker Estates is not just wood and stone. It is a vessel, and lately it has been filling up with poison. I know they call you sensitive. I know they think your heart is a soft thing that bruises easily. They are wrong. Your heart is an instrument. It detects falsehood. That is why you were the only one who could not sleep while I was dying. I have let them believe what they wanted. I let Karen think she was the heir apparent. I let the board think they were entitled to my accounts. I needed to see what they would do when they thought the referee had left the field. I needed to know if they would protect my legacy or carve it up for parts. I recorded the answer. Now you hold the evidence. Use it wisely, Aurora. But use it. The memories were never just memories. They were the only thing they could not confiscate. Unless you hand them over. Do not hand them over. Love, Eleanor. I swallowed hard, tracing the lines of ink. The typed sheet was a roadmap. Every withdrawal, every hidden camera clip, every forged signature cataloged with dates and amounts. $142,000 over 18 months. $80,000 from the long-term care fund. $40,000 from the maintenance reserve. Every penny aligned perfectly with Karen's credit card payments for her home renovation, Chase's crypto investments, Veronica's spa weekends. I reached for my phone and dialed Rowan. It's Aurora. I have the boxes and I found the voided power of attorney in the dumpster. There was a pause. Then Rowan chuckled, a dry, dark sound. She always said Karen didn't read enough. Are you ready? Not yet, I said, looking at the road ahead. I need one more thing. When is the investor showcase dinner Karen is planning? Next Saturday. Because if we're going to drop the bomb, we shouldn't do it in a lawyer's office. We should do it when the audience is watching. That is very theatrical of you, Aurora. I'm just following the script. Eleanor left me the memories. I think it's time I shared them with the group. The conference room in Rowan Garrison's law firm was quiet except for the rhythmic tapping of a pen against a legal pad. The air conditioner hummed a low monotonous note that vibrated in my teeth. I sat at the head of the table flanked by two towering figures of the legal world. On my right was Rowan, looking more like granite than a man. On my left was Evelyn Keller, a specialist in elder law and estate litigation. Spread out on the mahogany table was the anatomy of the board's betrayal, the rusted tin box, the silver USB drive, the water-stained voided power of attorney I had fished out of a dumpster, and my crime board digitized now into a spreadsheet glowing on the projector screen. Let's review the financials again, Evelyn said, voice crisp. She pointed at the screen. You have documented withdrawals totaling $142,000 over 18 months. Yes, I said, voice steady but tight. $80,000 from the long-term care fund, $40,000 from the maintenance reserve. The rest in cash withdrawals that align perfectly with Karen's credit card payments for her apartment renovation. Evelyn nodded. And the power of attorney found in the trash. Eleanor revoked it 6 months ago. Karen knew. She buried it. Rowan leaned forward. In the eyes of the law, this is not just mismanagement. Aurora. This is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. It is a felony. If we take this to the district attorney, Karen isn't just looking at civil liability. She is looking at prison time. The word hung in the air. Prison. I looked down at my hands. I hated Karen. I hated her arrogance, her greed, her cruelty. But prison, that was a bell you could not unring. We are not talking criminal charges yet, Rowan said. We are talking control. About the trust. He opened the blue-bound document and turned to page 42. The public will I read last week was theater. Eleanor knew if she left the clubhouse directly to Karen in the will, Karen would simply sell it before anyone could stop her. So she didn't. She transferred the title into this trust 2 years ago. I blinked. So the clubhouse doesn't belong to the estate. Correct. The clubhouse belongs to the trust, governed by a trustee. Currently that is me. But the moment Eleanor died, the successor trustee position became available. He slid the document closer. The will designated Karen as beneficiary of the residual estate, the leftovers. But this trust controls the main asset. It overrides everything. He pointed to the signature line. If you sign this, Aurora, you accept the trusteeship. You become the sole legal owner and operator of the Whitaker Estates clubhouse. You can fire Karen. You can evict her. You can demand she repay every cent she stole. Or you can liquidate her personal assets to recover the funds. I stared at the black line. It looked like a cliff edge. If I sign this, I am declaring war. Not just a legal battle, a total war. They will be humiliated. The whole neighborhood will never forgive me. Your board stood by while Karen robbed a dying woman, Evelyn said sharply. They took their cut. Do not forget that. I know. But to do this, to expose them publicly in a neighborhood like Whitaker Estates, it destroys the name Eleanor built. No, Rowan corrected. It saves the reputation. Because if you don't sign, Karen turns that clubhouse into a glass box, sells it to a hotel chain, and Eleanor's legacy becomes a footnote in a corporate acquisition. Is that what Eleanor wanted? I felt a wave of nausea. The weight was crushing. It was one thing to gather evidence in the privacy of my house. It was another to pull the trigger that would blow the neighborhood apart. Evelyn leaned in. Aurora, you have two choices. Option A, walk away. Let Karen have the clubhouse. Let her pave over the garden. Let the board spend the reserve money they didn't earn. You keep the peace, but you will spend the rest of your life knowing you let them get away with it. You will watch them use money meant for Eleanor's morphine to buy golf carts and vacation homes. She paused. Option B, use the power Eleanor gave you. Sign that paper. Stop the renovation. Force them to face who they are. Yes, they will call you a monster. They will say you are bitter and jealous. But you will be the only person who can sleep at night knowing you told the truth. I looked at Rowan. What happens if I sign? If you sign, we file an immediate injunction to stop construction. We serve Karen with a notice of removal as operator. And we file a demand for accounting for the missing funds. And when do we do it? Rowan smiled that dry, dangerous smile. Karen is hosting an investor showcase dinner next Saturday. She has invited the entire town council, the bank managers, and the partners from the Azure Group. She plans to unveil the new design. It is the perfect stage. Evelyn added, if you serve her quietly, she can spin it. But if you stop her when the spotlight is on her, she has nowhere to hide. I stood up. The room felt too small. I need to think. I need one night. Rowan nodded. Take the night. But remember, the construction crews are moving fast. Every day you wait is another wall knocked down. I drove back to my house in a daze. I didn't turn on the radio. When I got home, I didn't look at my crime wall. Instead, I sat on the floor and opened my laptop. I plugged in the silver USB drive one last time. I scrolled past the evidence folders and clicked on the final video file titled Message for Aurora MP4. I had watched it before, but I hadn't really listened to the end. Digital Eleanor appeared on the screen. She looked tired but fierce. I fast-forwarded to the last minute. If you choose to use this, I give you the clubhouse, she said. Then she leaned closer. Aurora, listen closely. I know you. I know you're afraid of hurting them. You think forgiveness is a virtue, and usually it is. But I do not need you to forgive them for me. I am dead. My pain is over. What I need is for at least one person in this neighborhood to refuse to live on a lie. A beautiful lie is still a lie. Do not let them build a paradise on my bones and tell the world it is love. That is not peace. Aurora. That is surrender. The screen went black. That is not peace. That is surrender. I sat there for a long time. I thought about the way Karen had looked at me when she gave me the boxes, like I was trash she was kindly allowing to leave. I thought about Chase laughing about the old junk. I thought about the board counting pills and choosing the cheap ones to save $300. They hadn't just stolen money. They had stolen dignity. They had stolen the truth. And if I didn't sign, I was helping them bury the body. I didn't sleep. At 8 in the morning I showered. I put on my best suit. A charcoal gray blazer that made me look sharper, older. I pulled my hair back. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back didn't look like the emotional little neighbor anymore. She looked like a trustee. I drove back to Rowan's office. When I walked in, he was already at his desk drinking coffee. He didn't say a word. He just opened the blue folder and uncapped a heavy fountain pen. My hand shook as I took it. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. This was the point of no return. I thought about the peace I was about to shatter. I thought about the holidays I would never be invited to again. I thought about the names they would call me. Then I thought about the brass key in my pocket for the day the wolves come. I wasn't the wolf. I was the gatekeeper. I pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed black and permanent. Aurora Flores. I dated it. I put the pen down. It sounded loud in the quiet office. Rowan picked up the document. It is done. You are now the legal owner of the Whitaker Estates clubhouse. I don't feel like an owner, I said. I feel like an executioner. Sometimes justice feels like that, Rowan said. He closed the folder. Now let's plan the execution. We spent the next 4 hours mapping out the strategy. It had to be precise. It had to be devastating. We need a temporary restraining order to halt construction, Evelyn said, pacing. But if we file it today, Karen gets wind before the dinner. She will cancel the event and spin the narrative. So we don't file it today, I said, cold logic taking over. We file it at 4 in the afternoon on Friday. The courts close at 5. By the time the clerk processes it, the weekend has started. Karen won't get notification until Monday, but the order will be active. Exactly, Rowan said, impressed. And the demand for accounting, we serve it personally at the dinner. She is selling investors a vision of the future based on a property she doesn't own. If I interrupt that dinner, I am not just embarrassing her. I am saving those investors from fraud. It is my fiduciary duty as trustee. Rowan smiled. Spoken like a true forensic accountant. What about the presentation? I asked. Karen is going to have a slideshow. We can use that. I have media files that need to be added to the playlist. If Karen wants to talk about legacy, I think we should let the founder speak for herself. We worked through lunch. We drafted notices. We organized exhibits. Every withdrawal, every lie, every video clip cataloged and ready. By the time I left the office, the sun had broken through the clouds. I felt lightheaded, but the crushing weight of indecision was gone. I was no longer the neighbor waiting for scraps. I was the storm on the horizon. The transformation of the clubhouse was complete, and to my eyes it was grotesque. Karen had achieved her vision of coastal zen. The warmth of the old oak paneling was gone, hidden behind sheets of drywall painted blinding sterile white. The antique maritime paintings had been replaced by abstract blue smudges. The comforting scent of old wood and lake air had been scrubbed away, overpowered by chemical paint and expensive floral perfume. It was 7 in the evening. The sun had set and the investor showcase was in full swing. I stood at the edge of the crushed shell driveway watching sleek black sedans and luxury SUVs disgorge men in tailored suits and women in cocktail dresses. Are you ready? Rowan asked. He stood to my right like a granite cliff. No, I said honestly. My hands were sweating. But let's go. Evelyn on my left adjusted her glasses. Remember, Aurora, you are not crashing a party. You are inspecting your property. We walked up the steps. The front door was propped open by a caterer holding champagne flutes. He smiled, assuming we were guests. I took a glass. Not to drink but to steady my hands. The main parlor had been gutted. The wall separating it from the dining room had been knocked down, an illegal modification. High-tech LED lights cast a cool blue wash. In the center, a massive projection screen displayed a looping drone shot of the lake with the logo Harbor Light Club, reimagining suburban luxury, floating over the water. The room was crowded. I recognized the mayor near the raw bar. I saw the head of the zoning board laughing with Robert. And in the center of it all, holding a glass of scotch, was Ethan Price, the investor Karen had been courting. Karen was circulating like a shark in white silk. She looked radiant, triumphant. Chase was right behind her, live streaming on his phone. I kept my head down, moving through the periphery. I caught the eye of Marta, the longtime housekeeper. She gave me a tiny nod and shifted to block Karen's line of sight. I slipped toward the back where a temporary AV booth had been set up. The young man with messy hair and a headset was Leo, the kid Eleanor used to tip with cookies. "Hey!" I whispered. Leo jumped. "Aura? I didn't think you were invited. Karen said you were taking space." "I am taking space," I said. "I am taking the whole room." "Leo." I pulled out the silver USB drive. "Do you remember the story Eleanor told you about the storm of '93? How she held the roof down with ropes?" Leo smiled. "Yeah. She was a badass. She needs you to do one more thing for her. There is a file on here named Presentation Override. When I nod at you, play it. It will take over the main screen and sound system." Leo looked at the drive, then at Karen laughing loudly. He looked back at me. "Is she going to fire me?" "She can't fire you, because she isn't the one paying the bill anymore. Do not stop it, Leo. No matter what she screams, do not stop it." Leo closed his fist around the drive. "For Eleanor." I stepped back out. Just as the lights dimmed, a spotlight hit the center. The chatter died. Karen stepped into the light holding a microphone with TED Talk confidence. "Welcome everyone," she said, voice amplified. "And thank you for coming to witness the rebirth of this beautiful location." Polite applause rippled. "For decades this clubhouse has stood as a relic," Karen continued, pacing. "It was charming, yes, but cluttered, weighted down by the past. We all know to move forward we must be brave enough to let go. We must clear away the dust of memory to make room for the shine of the future." I felt bile rise. Dust of memory. "The Harbor Light Club will be a sanctuary of modern minimalism," she declared, gesturing to the screen. The drone footage faded, replaced by architectural renderings, white walls, glass walkways, a sterile infinity pool where Eleanor's rose garden used to be. "We are stripping this building to its bones. We are removing the rot of the old century to build a high-efficiency, high-luxury destination. We respect the history, of course, but we refuse to be trapped by it." She paused for dramatic effect. "And now I want to show you the future." She swept her arm toward the screen. I looked at Leo. I nodded. The renderings flickered. The screen went black for a heartbeat. The smooth jazz cut out with a sharp static hiss. Then a new image filled the massive screen. It was shaky, grainy footage of a hospital bed. A collective gasp went through the room. Eleanor looked frail, but her eyes, magnified to 10 feet tall, were blazing. "If you are watching this," Eleanor's voice boomed through the surround sound, "it means my neighbor Aurora has finally decided to stop being polite." The room went dead silent. Karen froze. "What is this?" "Leo, wrong file," Eleanor continued, overriding Karen's squeak. "I am Eleanor Whitaker, and if you are standing in my clubhouse right now, drinking my wine, listening to Karen talk about legacy, you are being sold a lie." Ethan Price took a step back. The scene cut to hidden camera footage from the bedroom. The date stamp was visible. November 20th. Audio crystal clear. "Just sign right here by the yellow tag," Karen's voice said. Predatory sweet. "Is this for Aurora?" Eleanor asked. Yes, for Aurora, Karen lied. The audience watched in horror as Karen on screen manipulated the document. Turn it off, Karen screamed, composure shattering. She waved frantically at the booth. Technical difficulties. Turn it off now. Leo ducked behind his console, pretending to fiddle with wires but doing nothing to stop the feed. The video cut again. Split screen. Bank statement highlighted in red on one side, hidden camera of Karen and Veronica in the kitchen on the other. She throws up because she is dying. Mom, Karen's voice echoed. It is part of the process. We need to cut overhead. Just give her the generic. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth. Karen's mother went pale. That is out of context, Robert shouted. This is a deep fake. But the video didn't stop. Eleanor appeared again. They think I am confused. They think I do not know that $50,000 disappeared from the care fund last Tuesday. Karen, if you are watching this, did you enjoy the spa weekend in Vermont? I hope the massage was worth a felony. Karen lunged toward the AV booth. Rowan stood up. His courtroom baritone commanded obedience. Sit down, Karen. Karen stopped, panting. Rowan walked into the center holding a sheath of papers stamped with the official seal of the Superior Court. I am Rowan Garrison, attorney for the Whitaker Estates Clubhouse Trust. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, Judge Miller has issued a temporary restraining order halting all construction, renovation, and business operations on this property. He turned to the crowd, holding the papers high. This order is based on evidence of fraud, financial exploitation of an elder, and unauthorized destruction of historic property. Any investor currently writing a check to the Harbor Light Club is funding a crime scene. Ethan Price dropped his glass. It shattered. He looked at Karen with pure disgust. You told me the title was clean. It is clean, Karen shrieked. She was senile. The screen flickered one last time. The video ended but the audio kept playing, a cell phone recording of clinking glasses. Honestly, once she kicks the bucket we can finally stop pretending to care about the dust. I'm going to burn those stupid journals first. Chase's voice. Cheers to that. The old hag is taking forever to die. I need that payout for the crypto launch. Laughter. Chase, who was live streaming, slowly lowered his phone. His face was gray. The live stream had just broadcast that audio to his entire following. The silence was suffocating, the silence of a reputation dying in real time. I stepped out from the shadows. The crowd parted. I walked up to the front, past the board who couldn't meet my eyes. I stopped in front of Karen. She was trembling, perfect makeup running. I took the microphone. Felt heavy. My name is Aurora Flores. I am the sole trustee of the Whitaker Estates Clubhouse Trust. I looked out at the shocked faces. My neighbor spent 40 years building a community where people felt safe. She did not leave this clubhouse to be reimagined. She left it to be remembered. I turned to Karen. I didn't yell. You wanted a clean slate, Karen? You got it. The construction stops tonight. The investors are leaving. And on Monday morning, the forensic audit of the accounts begins. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick file Evelyn had prepared, the demand for accounting and the notice of eviction. I dropped it onto the glass table. Thud. The sound echoed. Get out of my clubhouse, I said. Karen opened her mouth to scream, to spin another lie. But she looked at Ethan Price already walking toward the door. She looked at the mayor typing on his phone, distancing himself. She looked at the screen where a freeze frame of Eleanor's face still loomed, watching her. For the first time in her life, Karen Voss had nothing to say.